Hello, welcome to the instructional video for week 17. Thanks for joining me. We have a lot of good stuff this week, so let's dive into your objectives. Again this week for your language objective, no new one, just go back and pull some activities for prepositions, opposites, other language objectives, and continue to incorporate those as you see fit. For the cognitive objective for this week, we have one that is follows multi-step directions under the category of remembering. Parents love this one because it's what we want to do. We want to give our child a list of things to do and have them go off and complete it. And yet this is a really difficult one for little children. You have to hold a lot of information in your head at once and recall it later and not get distracted, and it's often a challenging one for little kids. So we're going to begin to broach that and to let them practice it. It is a really great skill though when it comes to school and if they enter kindergarten, because multi-step directions are something that they will encounter throughout the day. At this age, 2 or 3 steps are really the most. So we're just barely getting away from a 1-step instruction and just taking that next step forward into a 2 or maybe 3-step instruction activity. So some tips to help your child have success with this difficult skill are, first of all, minimize distractions. So you want to make sure your child is fully paying attention, maybe get down at their eye level and talk directly to them. Make sure you have their focus and attention before or as you give the instructions to your child. Ask them to repeat the instructions back to you so that you know that they have heard it and that they've heard it in the right order. Be concise and specific. So instead of telling your child, go clean your room, you might tell them to, for instance, put your stuffed animals on the bed and put your shoes in the closet. Really precise, detailed instructions rather than something generic that leaves it open to interpretation. You could try numbering the directions, and that often turns it into like a little chant or something that kids have fun remembering. Like 1, put your backpack in your room. 2, wash your hands. And 3, tell your brother that it's snack time. And so by numbering those things, it helps them to remember it and makes it a little bit more fun. The other important thing to do, and this is where it takes an investment in time and patience for us, is that we can't just tell them this and then send them off. That's a recipe for frustration and disaster, both on the child's part and on our part. This is a skill that they're going to need to practice, and they're going to need your help to practice it. So until you're pretty sure that your child has mastered this skill, at least most of the time, right? At least most of the time they're successful at remembering and accomplishing the steps. You want to make sure that you're supervising, that you're there with your child and observing and offering them, a little bit of help if necessary to remember, what are you supposed to do next? Do you remember what number 3 on the list was? After you do this and this, what is the next part? And prompt them, help them to be successful instead of sending them off and then 10 minutes later going to find them to discover that they've gotten halfway through the first thing and then become distracted and gone on to do something else. And then we get frustrated and they get frustrated, and the skill isn't really being practiced that way. If anything, it's just setting them up to be frustrated with the activity. So it will require you to sort of, you can't just stay in the kitchen doing what it was that you were doing yet. But the good news is that if you practice this consistently, like that's the goal, right? You can tell them to go off and do these things, and then you can proceed with what you were doing, secure in the knowledge that they're going to remember those steps and go and do it. Some activity ideas in order to actually incorporate this are to provide those multi-step directions to just your normal daily routine. So getting ready for the day, preparing to go somewhere, or a bedtime routine. These are all great places because they usually involve lots of different activities where you can give your child multiple tasks to accomplish. Another great one is making a small craft or a small project. You might give them multi-step directions to that, like color the monster purple and then glue the eyes on. And that's a little more like pseudo school related practice where they're working on a project or a worksheet and they're being asked to do things in a specific order. Or you might just play a silly game with it. You could say, jump up and down 2 times and spin around 3 times, and make it just a really fun and active game where they're still practicing the same skill. For your literacy objectives for this week, we are to the letter Q. So the consonant Q is a little bit different from the other consonants. It makes a sound similar to the hard C and a W combined. So just the sound of it is a little more complex. It's qua. It's got 2 sounds really there combined into one. In English words, the letter Q is always followed by a U. So it might be helpful at this point, depending on your particular child, to start teaching them that right from the beginning. The rhyme we like to use in our house for that is Q and U stick like glue. And you just start to teach them that by pointing it out to them. Every word you see with a Q in it is going to have a U right after it. So you point that out to your child, you say, there's Q, and maybe you practice the sound of Q, but then you point out the U as well and say the little rhyme. Look, there's U. Q and U stick like glue. So if your child already recognizes the letter U, you might want to begin incorporating this teaching as well. The reason is this will come in handy down the road when your child is beginning to segment and to read, because they will know that, when they go to write a word and they hear the qua sound and they write the Q, they know to automatically write the U after it. And then also when they're reading, as they're sounding it out, they need to be aware that that U is not, it doesn't make its normal vowel sound. It's kind of silent there next to the Q. So in other words, they shouldn't enunciate that U when they're reading, that it just simply goes with the Q. So it's not something that you have to broach with your child at this point. You can just teach them the Q, the lowercase and uppercase, recognizing those letters, and then also the sound of Q, qua. But again, if they already recognize the letter U, you might begin to incorporate that teaching as well. And then also for literacy objective this week, we have identifies story-related problems. In math, we're going to continue to teach counting to 100 by tens. This is usually a quick, easy one. You just use the hundreds chart and you count down the side of it, showing them the tens, and pointing out to them also that they all end in 0. You want to make sure you point out that similarity to them. We're going to sort items according to their shape regardless of color. So this can be a tricky one because you're asking your child to disregard the characteristic that children usually see and mentally process first, which is the color of an object. And you're asking them to sort of disregard that and to sort them by shape instead. And Legos make the perfect, Legos are so wonderful for learning activities, but they make the perfect tool for this one as well. And then we also begin to practice the days of the week. For your fine motor objectives, we have 1 pincer grasp activity, 1 spherical grasp activity, 1 bilateral hand coordination activity, and 1 in-hand manipulation activity. For social emotional objectives, we have under the category of relationship skills, seeking advice or assistance from peers or adults to resolve conflict where appropriate. So going to ask for help, not just recognizing that there's a social conflict maybe going on or a problem that they're encountering, but then where do I go to seek help for this particular problem? And then under the category of responsible decision making, we have recognizes situations that are safe versus dangerous. And we have a whole other video that specifically dives into this one and addressing safety issues with your child. For your fun project for this week, we're going to start a series of projects on animal classification. Little kids love animals and they love to sort. So this is a fantastic ongoing project to keep your child engaged. It covers a lot of science objectives. And again, it gets them involved in sorting. So it teaches them the characteristics of different categories of animals. We go through mammals, reptiles, birds, fish, and amphibians, and teaching them the characteristics of these different types of animals and working with some popular examples of them. And so this week we begin that series with mammals. So I hope you have fun with that, and we'll see you back next week.